This podcast is not a source of legal advice. No two legal cases are the same. Contact an attorney if you require legal assistance.
Yeah. So did you hear 7 years MERP law? Woohoo! 7-year anniversary.
I saw that. Congratulations.
Thank you. With MERP law. So
That's
MERP
big.
law celebrating 7 years. Yeah, it is big, but we like to celebrate all those milestones. So, and I had a new associate start today, so that's another
I've
awesome
heard.
milestone.
That's great. I've heard she's a former PD.
She is a former public defender from
That's
Alaska.
great. Yeah.
So she is from our area. She graduated law school and she wanted to be a public defender. And it was 2020, which was COVID. And she just went where the job was, which is like a commitment, right? So she was there 4 years. She said she did a lot of trials. Like it was not like resolving cases with pleas and negotiations. It was a lot of trials. But today was her first day, and she sat with me all morning, and she, New Jersey, as somebody who worked in Pennsylvania first, and then, I was barred in both states, but worked as a Philly public defender. New Jersey law is different than any other law. It just is.
I will say it's good that she's got trial experience because I ultimately think trial attorney is the way of the future, especially with what we have with AI and how it's going to replace a lot of what people do that aren't necessarily in the courtroom. So I think that's great. And that's one of the things I'll get into is, the trial attorney is certainly the way of the future.
Today on the Mighty MERP podcast, we're tackling the subject that is rapidly reshaping the legal profession: artificial intelligence, and how attorneys can use it effectively, ethically, and strategically. AI is no longer theoretical. It's embedded in research platforms, drafting tools, document review systems, analytical platforms, marketing software, and workflow automation. The question for lawyers, though, is no longer whether AI will impact our practice, but how we can engage with it without compromising competence, confidentiality, credibility in the courtroom. So joining me today, back again, is Alex Settle, First Assistant Deputy Public Defender of Atlantic County, who brings insight, and I'll say practical insights, into how attorneys can responsibly integrate AI into their practice and how to avoid the very real pitfalls that can create ethical exposure or malpractice risk. So Alex, welcome back, and let's start.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, this topic's something that I'm excited about, and especially because the way that I see it going in the future with AI use. I know more and more people are integrating it into their work. I get the benefit that Jen Saletti at the Public Defender's Office has really embraced AI and given us the tools that we need to use it and really take it to the next level. Everybody's aware of ChatGPT and all of these other services. We have advanced AI as a New Jersey State employee that lets us use like a closed loop AI. So anything that we put in that, any personal identifying information doesn't make its way out into the world, which goes to your ethical use of AI.
Yeah, so I'm gonna dumb it down, and I'm gonna be the Gen Xer, the older person who probably does not understand technology as much as the younger generation. So I'm going to ask like basic questions. When I say AI, I think everyone thinks ChatGPT, but for attorneys who still see AI as a buzzword, other than, you talked about the public defender's office, but I guess I would say other than ChatGPT, what does AI encompass? And what are we talking about from like a person who's like, I hear this term AI, or how, there's this new platform or new buzzword, but I don't really know what it means. How would you explain it?
So to dumb it down, I mean, artificial intelligence, AI is it's a thinking model. In other words, it has the ability to think and to reason. There's been different models of AI that have been built up. ChatGPT started off with ChatGPT 1 and then 2 and then 3, 3.5, 4, 5, and each of these iterations get smarter and smarter. But ChatGPT isn't the only AI model. At the public defender's office, again, as a New Jersey State employee, we have the advanced AI that we can use, and there's a number of different models it uses. Nova's one of them, and it just has to do with what that particular learning model is. So to bring it down real basic, if you think of ChatGPT, that's like generally what most people think of when they hear AI. And ChatGPT is great. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic for the average person. You could type something into it just like you would a Google search, and it gives you more responsive answers,
Mhm.
which is one of the reasons that I think where we are currently in the way that things are going, I'll get into some of the more advanced technology, but clients don't really need attorneys anymore to tell them what they're facing, for a disorderly persons offense or what they're facing for a third degree theft. Years ago, they did. I mean, the 2C was very confusing. They needed to go to an attorney and say, "Hey, what am I looking at?" Nowadays, they can probably type in general information into ChatGPT, and it'll spit out an answer that's good. Um, the way that I see things going in the future is the real use of it is for attorneys, and the benefit is I see more need for trial attorneys and for attorneys that know the specific counties and know what goes on in those counties. Like you, for example, you're in Atlanta County often. Your knowledge is particular to dealing with the prosecutors in Atlantic and how this particular prosecutor responds. Do they respond to mitigation? Do they respond to treatment? Are they understanding of mental health issues? How can you set your client up in the best position to negotiate their case? Same thing with tendencies for judges. This particular judge, what issues does this judge care about? Do they care heavily about the aggravating and mitigating factors in terms of you arguing for a particular sentence? Are they more interested in rehabilitation and treatment? In particular, those little nuances of the counties. I think that's kind of where we're going in the future. I think that AI has kind of replaced the general information that attorneys would normally provide, and we're going towards more specific knowledge of the attorneys in that particular county.
Right. Although, so I always think of the ethics side of the conversation of AI, which is I would agree with you that you could either in ChatGPT or Google or any other AI search engine obtain the information about maybe penalties on a disorderly persons or third degree theft as you gave. With that being said, I would still say any attorney who handles criminal practice is still legally obligated to make sure that they tell their clients what those penalties are, even if the person says, "Oh, no, no, I already know," or "I already read it." So I don't think that, I think it's always still part of that first conversation that you have. And I think if you don't do it, there's going to be a problem with your representation of that client. So I'm going to say, I think ChatGPT can be helpful at times. But so let me ask you, or just AI in general, what do you think it brings or can do for attorneys that make trial attorneys more important now? So I guess my question is, are you under the position that contract lawyers aren't going to be needed, or um
I'm under the position that it's going to make attorneys more effective in terms
mhm,
of you won't need as many of them to do a certain job. And the same thing goes for paralegals, right? So if we're just talking about let's just talk about very basic. We're talking about ChatGPT and the functions that ChatGPT can serve. Like ChatGPT is very good if you want to provide it with a letter or an email to rewrite. Then you want it to use a certain tone. Do you want it to have a softer tone? Do you want to have a more professional tone? Do you want to have a friendlier tone? Do you want to take it and do you want it to correct all of the grammar and spelling? Because ChatGPT is probably one of the best proofreaders. Like if you ever go to send an email, run it through ChatGPT first, and just have the prompt correct any grammar or spelling, right? It will inevitably fix something in your writing. So that's at the very basic level. That's what ChatGPT can do. But there's also way more advanced AI features. And I got to say, at the Public Defender's Office, I am totally spoiled because they have taken the initiative and to invest in more advanced forms of AI. Everybody uses Lexis or Westlaw or some version of that for legal research. There is a new, I'll say newer version of Westlaw, that's Westlaw Advantage, that's out now. And it is put together with co-counsel. The benefit of Westlaw Advantage is that they have an AI advanced research, and it allows you just to type in a plain text question. So let's say, for example, even for an attorney, let's take an attorney use. You have a client is charged with third-degree theft, and you want to negotiate the case to a disorderly persons offense. What type of disorderly persons offenses can they plead to? And it'll give you a list based on the factual elements of that particular theft and other available disorderly person offenses. You can give it a quick synopsis, like these are the short facts of the case. The client's charged with X, Y, and Z. What are the alternative remedies? What disorderly person's offense can they plead to? And it'll give you an entire write-up on the different disorderly person's offenses, what meets the statutory elements. But then it can take it a step further. It can ask you additional questions. Does your client have any prior convictions? Does your client have any licensing? Are they a nurse? Do they have a casino key card? Because these things are what affects people's jobs, right? It affects their licensing.
Are they U.S. citizens?
Are they U.S. citizens? Yeah, you can ask all of these additional questions, and it'll provide you with that information. And the benefit of using something like Westlaw as opposed to using something like ChatGPT is Westlaw is closed loop, meaning any of the statutes that you get and any of the information that you get is contained in the Westlaw database itself. The danger that you see when you ask these questions of ChatGPT, and attorneys, have ChatGPT write a brief, right? And they don't check the sources for that brief, and they submit the brief, and the judge ends up trying to rely on a case that's cited that doesn't actually exist because AI completely hallucinated that case. Again, it's good, but it's not perfect. You still need to check the work on Westlaw, but what you can rely on is the fact that it's closed loop. It's not going to just hallucinate a case. It'll give you the particular site for that case. You can click that site, and then you can read the case for yourself. So again, I'm spoiled at the Public Defender's Office because I have the ability to use that. They've invested in the advanced software for us. That's just one of the limited things that it can do. One of the more advanced things it can do is, say you take an opposing party's brief. You can upload that to Westlaw, have it analyze it, and it will identify all of the arguments and the counter arguments that you can make, as well as the relevant authority for those counter arguments. Pretty remarkable.
So what would your position be to a lawyer who was saying, I'm not going to use AI, or I'm not comfortable with that, or I don't know enough about it? Do you think that AI at this point is the competitive advantage? Do you think it's a baseline? Do you think all lawyers should be familiar with it? Because there was a time, when I was in law school, Westlaw and Lexis were pretty new. And there were people still saying, nope, I'm going to use the books, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And do you think that's where we are? That's because it was a big shift going from the books to the Westlaw and Lexis.
Yeah, I liken it to the attorney, 20, 25 years ago that says, I'm not going to use the internet. I've been practicing for so long. I've gotten this far in life. I haven't had the need for the internet. The yellow pages work great. Why would I advertise on the internet? Why would I use
Why
any of
would
the
I
search
advertise
features?
on the
Like, why
yeah.
why would I do any of that? Like, I'm not going to waste my time learning that. That is where we are at, I think, with AI right now. And it's like, it's one of these things where you're going to have to start using it because you will get left behind. Like the AI feature on Westlaw, just the advanced AI where I can ask a basic question and it can spit out a memorandum, is one of the most useful things that I use in my practice now. It's something that attorneys would say to a paralegal, hey, I have this legal issue. Can you research it and write me a memorandum on it? It might take them 4 or 5 hours. I can get the same result with probably a more comprehensive memorandum in less than 10 minutes. So
Hmm.
it's a huge advantage. And I think what Jen Saletti is the public defender and Jennifer Perez, who's one of the deputies, what I think that they have seen is it helps leverage our time. It,
Hmm.
it 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 makes us a lot more efficient. In other words, if I don't have to spend 3 or 4 hours researching a particular issue, I can put it into AI. It gives me more time to spend with my clients. It gives me more time to actually like work on the substantive issues and use my brain for, which is the reason that I went to law school.
Yeah, I love that. And then there's a part of me that thinks in 5 years from now, people will say, well, you have so much more time. You can handle so many more cases, which
It's
will,
possible, right?
yeah, it'll tip it the other way.
You've got 300 clients now. Why not 600?
Well, we've seen
Yeah.
that, increase dramatically over the years
Yeah.
as well. So you mentioned Westlaw Advance, ChatGPT. How do you determine if the platform or application that you're using is reputable? How do you figure that out within the context of legal research or, you know, within a law firm?
So, so for ChatGPT, I think people need to recognize and understand the limitations of it, right? ChatGPT is not closed source in terms of there's not a legal library database. What it relies on is it relies on the internet and it relies on inputs, and it's a learning model. So it gets things wrong. It's gotten a lot better, but it still has the possibility to hallucinate. I think that there was a
And when
recent
you
study
say
that was
hallucinate, you mean really just making up case law,
just
which it
completely
does.
making it up. Yeah,
If you've
just
ever
completely make up a
used
case.
it, it'll make up a case. And if you're not really that familiar with the case law, um, I would say you have to check everything, but it'll just make up sites that don't exist and cases that
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
exist.
It'll make up a case that doesn't exist. And I know there have been some attorneys in the past that have been sanctioned because instead of checking the case, they submit the brief. The court goes to rely on that particular case in writing their decision. Fortunately, I know it happened. Maybe it was about a year ago. A judge was writing his decision. He went to rely on it, and I think it was a motion for summary judgment. Decided to look the case up, and it turned out that the case didn't exist. And I think each of the attorneys got sanctioned $15,000 because it was a big case, and not to mention a huge ethical issue if you don't at least check your work. I think the
Correct, but
limitation
it would
of uh-huh.
oh, sorry. I was going to say, but here's the thing. If your paralegal or an associate wrote the brief and your name is on it, and this even before AI, and they cited case that didn't exist or made up case, that attorney would still be sanctioned because it's your name
Still,
on the
yeah.
brief and you're still obligated to verify that the law and the information in it is correct.
Absolutely. You're still on the hook for it, right? I mean, and nothing's changed in that respect. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the big limitations of ChatGPT. One, it has the potential to hallucinate a case. And then two, you don't have the ability to quickly and easily check your work. So, like, say,
Mhm.
for example, you had ChatGPT that wrote your brief, right? Unless you go and you research each one of those cases, which, I mean, it depends on how long the brief is, you could have 30, 40, 50 cases. And if it's not a case that you see, often, it's not one of the normal ones that come up, you may not know, right? Like you may
Mhm.
not know offhand. And the benefit of using something like Westlaw, or even I'm sure Lexis has something similar. I don't know. I haven't used Lexis's new AI features, but I'm just going off of the knowledge that I have on Westlaw. is if I see a case, I can actually see the authority table and I could see where it's cited and I could see that it's actually a case. I could see the key cite on it. So I know for a fact that if it is citing this case actually exists. So it's much easier to do a cursory review and look through the case and say, okay, this is a legitimate case. So I
Mhm.
think when you use ChatGPT, you have to understand what is the particular limitation of ChatGPT. Limitation is that it may not get it correct, and it's on you to make sure it's correct because your name is
Right.
going on the brief. Versus if you use something that's closed loop like a Lexis or like a Westlaw, you can have confidence that when you review it, you can quickly and easily check all of those sites.
Right. And when
And with
yeah, go ahead. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean
the advanced AI that we use, as New Jersey state employees, we understand that limitation too. It's good for what it's good for. It's good for proofreading. It's good for brainstorming. It's good for coming up with outlines. It's good for uploading information, documents that may contain personal identifying information and understanding that that information is not saved. It's not a learning model. It doesn't train the particular model. So you don't have those concerns with it. But one, it's not going to hallucinate a case, but two, it's just not going to give you that case because it doesn't have that information contained in the database.
right. And that's what I've never heard the term closed loop before regarding AI or that understanding, but it's that it's not pulling from random sources. It's all
Yeah,
within the
because that's
right.
what
And
ChatGPT is. It's not closed loop. It's a learning based model. It's pulling from the internet. It's pulling from inputs that have been provided from other users, and eventually it could get it wrong. In a high number of cases, it does. Now, it doesn't get things as wrong as often as it used to because each of the models are continuing to get smarter. And one of the ways that's actually funny in terms of how they test how smart the model has gotten is they make it take the bar exam.
oh,
And
really?
I think it was it was ChatGPT 1, 2, and 3 all failed the bar exam. I don't think it was until either 3.5 or 4, it may have been 3.5, that they finally passed the bar exam, but they were in the bottom like 10% of the bar exam. And with the most recent model, I want to say it's gone as high as in the top 80%. So there's been a significant improvement.
With the closed loop AI, you said they are not a learning model. They don't learn those
So the
AIs.
closed loop, yeah, it's not. So for example, like Westlaw AI is closed loop, right? And
Hmm.
it's not a learning based model. It'll basically take the information that you provide it and it'll run it through the tables of authority and the sources that it has. So like for example, if I take an opposing party's brief and I upload it to their analyzer, their litigation analyzer. It'll process all of the information in there. It'll encrypt it. It'll keep it safe on there and it'll stay there for as long as you keep it on there before you delete it. And the information that it takes in terms of analyzing it all comes from the closed loop of what they have in their database. So it's all of the statutes, the sources, the secondary sources, case law. It's everything that's within Westlaw's database. They don't then take information and pull it over from somewhere else. So it's all closed loop. It's contained within Westlaw. Now, what's interesting is when I talked about co-counsel. Co-counsel is a little bit different. Again, we get that feature as well. Co-counsel allows you to upload documents. So, for example, if you took discovery for a case, you can
Hmm.
take the discovery, you can upload it, and then I want to say for criminal law, there's approximately like 70 different functions that it could do. Like, say for example, if you want to upload a complaint, it can draft an email to your client to explain the allegations that are in the complaint. Let's say you want to upload, a good portion of the discovery, and you want it to create a witness list. It could pull all of the names out of the discovery and create a witness list for you. Um, if you wanted to identify particular defenses, you can ask it to identify defenses within the discovery. Now, again, it's not 100%. It's still new. It's still learning. One of the criticisms I have of it is if you upload it and you say, generate cross-examination questions. The cross-examination questions aren't very good. A
Hmm.
lot of them are open-ended questions, and as you know, as a defense attorney, there is zero chance you are ever asking an open-ended questions. You're controlling the witness, so that's one of the limitations. But it will get better. I mean, it's going to get better over time. We're in like such the early stages of AI and the uses of AI, and I see it continuing to get better, and it's going to make attorneys a lot more productive, I would say. A lot more.
I would agree with the productivity. The question is, will it make them more effective in the courtroom?
That is a big question. I think yes and no, right? I think it will make them more effective in terms of it giving them the ability to quickly and easily access the information. And it has the ability to access the information on the fly. So for example, if you're in the middle of if you're in the middle of an argument and there's something that comes up, you could type a question into Westlaw AI and under 3 minutes have a full response to it.
Hmm.
If you're sitting there and you're negotiating with the prosecutor and you're saying, what about a disorderly persons offense? And you can't really come up with one offhand. What you usually used to do is go to the 2C and thumb through it if you couldn't think of one. Maybe one comes to mind that fits the factual basis for what actually occurred. It's easy enough that you could quickly type it into Westlaw AI to give you some ideas that is consistent with what actually occurred. Because again, you only want your client to plead guilty to something that actually happened, you know. So I do see it in terms of making you more effective in the courtroom for that. Um,
So let's talk about ethical issues in AI, because I
mhm.
think that's a lot of attorneys' fears, and it's the fears because you know the big news when you hear of any legal case in AI, it's always the cases that get caught of having wrong sites, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think the only news stories I hear about AI and lawyers are the negative about a lawyer submitting a brief with, you call it, hallucinations, but laws that don't
yeah.
exist. And I think that is why most attorneys are fearful because of the potential ethics violations. I mean, the fining of $15,000. I'm going to believe for that lawyer, although I'm not saying it's not a significant amount, was not going to be as significant as it sounds. Versus an ethics violation where you can be suspended, you can lose your license or potentially be disbarred. Um, so um, let's talk about the concerns of ethics and what do you think people are concerned about, and what is the reality of those concerns?
Yeah, I think they're valid concerns. I think people have concerns in regard to them disclosing information that they shouldn't disclose about a client and it
Mhm.
making its way out into the light. I think they have concerns that them filing a brief and it relying on case law that doesn't actually exist. And I think they're valid concerns. Here's the rule of thumb that I usually go by in terms of using ChatGPT and putting information into there. If the information isn't something that you are okay with putting into a brief or a memorandum or something that is going to go on eCourts and it is going to be visible to the public, it is not information that you should probably be putting into ChatGPT, right? So,
Mhm.
like, if there is personal information about your client, and this is information that you are not going to make public. In other words, it's not going into a sentencing memorandum. It's not going into a letter brief. I would be very cautious about putting any of that into ChatGPT because, again, you have no control over it. Once you've put it out there into the universe, you've put it out there into the universe. And we've had a training on this. The public defender's office, we recently did an AI panel where this is one of the things that we've talked about.
Hmm.
It's one of the reasons that we have the advanced AI feature that New Jersey State employees can use, and you don't have to have concerns that whatever personal information that you put in is going to make its way out there. But if you're somebody that doesn't work for the state, if you're somebody that doesn't have access to this, like what can you do to protect yourself? That's the general rule of thumb that I have is, don't put something in there that you don't want out there. There are other things that people can do. Don't put names and information. If it's Jane Doe, it's Jane Doe. It's not your client's name, because again, you don't want that information to be out there. And going to your question in regard to the hallucination of cases, I think if you're having ChatGPT write a brief, you have to be incredibly careful, right? Because that hallucination rate is so high. If you're having Westlaw AI write the brief for you, you still have the same concerns, but at least you can check their work. I liken it to like a math problem, right? Like you get the answer for the math problem, but you can also see the work that went there to get you to that answer. Uh, Westlaw AI gives you the work in terms of how they arrived at that answer. You can see where this particular case came from. You can see a site for this case, and you can pull up a quick summary for it. So I think
Hmm.
that's the distinction.
Right. So the whole chat GPT and the personal information, I think, falls really under the attorney client privilege issue.
Yeah.
And so that's one issue. What about the duty of competence? When does using chat GPT or AI um well, I'll say there's a few things. Is an attorney obligated to tell their client that they're using AI to generate their briefs or generate their research? Is there a point of reliance on AI that has to do with competency or malpractice exposure? So those are some of my concerns with AI.
Yeah, I think you as the attorney, you're always on the hook, right? It doesn't matter if the brief is written by AI. It doesn't matter if the brief is written by a paralegal or an intern. Rarely is the discussion had that this particular brief was written by the intern or the secretary or the law clerk, or in this case, AI. But I think the requirement of competence is still there. I mean, the obligation is still on you. At the end of the day, it might generate the content in that particular brief, but I think that it's up to you to make corrections throughout that brief. It's up to you to use your legal knowledge to maybe change certain arguments, because again, whatever AI spits out is not going to be exactly what you would want. At least it wouldn't be what I would want in terms of a brief. It might give you a good foundation, it might give you a good base for it, but I can't imagine myself taking a brief and just saying, okay, this looks perfect, I'm going to submit the brief as is. I don't operate like that.
Right. Well, I try to tell people that AI is a tool, just like, you know, the internet can be, or Westlaw or Lexis just doing research, and that it can't be the sole reliance of what you're submitting. But, I think that there's a concern because it can create such shortcuts that I think people, like you said, you're never going to rely on a draft or a brief that's been provided to you by AI completely, because you know that there could be issues. But I do think I have concerns about attorneys that are overworked or cut corners. So we have talked about potential pitfalls, and I think you've already mentioned how to avoid some pitfalls, like not providing personal information in ChatGPT, not providing information that you don't want out in the universe. What are other pitfalls you think that attorneys can or need to avoid while using AI?
I mean, I think that those are probably the biggest pitfalls that they need to avoid when using AI. I think it's useful. It's useful as a tool, right? But it
Mhm.
should not be the basis for somebody's complete practice. I think if you're too heavily reliant on AI, there are negative things that can occur, like you being sanctioned for submitting a brief that you shouldn't have submitted. I mean, the way that I look at it is like, i- it's AI writing a brief for you is no different than an intern writing a brief for you. You're not going to take the intern's brief and just turn that intern's brief into the court, right? Because as good as they might be, there's a high probability that they could make a mistake, right? And you don't want to be the one that's on the hook for that mistake. Because again, it's your name that's on the brief. And that's how I look at AI. I look at it as it's like your own personal intern. Sometimes that
Yeah.
continues to get smarter, right? Like over time, the intern continues to get smarter and smarter and smarter. But that's how I look at it.
Right. Do you have any concerns that AI or the technology is going to lose the create attorneys losing the human element of advocacy, the personal element of advocacy?
I don't have concerns over that, and I think that the human advocate about advocacy is probably going to be the most important thing that you have. AI is going to be used to write the briefs. It's going to be used to generate the sentencing memorandums. It's going to be used to generate the mitigation reports. Like this is what AI is going to be used for. But then I think the part of the attorney, especially a trial attorney, becomes that much more important, right? Because then it's that trial attorney's understanding how to argue certain things, whether it's to the
Mhm.
court or whether it's to present certain arguments to the opposing counsel. It's understanding, what again, what I went into in the beginning, what is in our case, what is of particular importance to this prosecutor, right? What does this
Mhm.
particular prosecutor care about? Do they care about, drug and alcohol treatment? Do they care about mental health treatment? Is mitigation very important to them? Knowing how they handle and how they negotiate a case. And I think that that human element is still going to be there. And the same thing goes for the particular judge that's handling the case, right? Like what is
Absolutely.
important to this particular judge? What are the sentencing nuances, right? Like you know this. If you're in Atlantic County and you're in Cape May County, you might as well be in two totally different worlds, right? Like in Cape May County, there's a possibility that the first offer you get on a bicycle theft is state prison, right? Where in Atlantic County, there's a chance that bicycle theft gets remanded, right? So you have to know how things are handled in these particular counties, and I think that's where you still have that human element, right? Like you still have that
Absolutely.
understanding and those particular nuances for what occurs in each of the counties.
Yeah. I had a Cape May distribution maintaining facility where my client was offered 40 years was the initial offer. And the judge said, "Did he kill someone?" The judge said that in response to the 40-year offer. Yeah, so I definitely agree with all of that. So I know that we need to be wrapping up. So I'm going to ask you a few things, a few last things.
All right.
Alex, if you had to leave attorneys with 3 takeaways from today about AI, most important, what would they be?
I would say the most important is you're going to have to learn AI. And the way that I liken it is to an attorney 25 years ago, where, internet is starting to become more mainstream in terms of law practice. If you're one of the attorneys that say, I'm not going to get on board with this internet thing, you unfortunately are going to get left behind.
Mhm.
Second, I would say is that AI is a tool, and that's how you're going to have to use it. You're going to have to use it as a tool. And the way that I look at it is it's like an intern that continues to get smarter, but you're still responsible at the end of the day for the information that's generated. If AI wrote a brief and you're going to submit that brief, you have to be very cautious that the information that contained in that brief is correct, because at the end of the day, you are the one that has put your name on that. The third takeaway that I would say is that AI is never going to be a replacement for the human element, ever. And I think it's more important, especially for what we do in criminal defense. I think it's very important in terms of trial work. You're never going to have artificial intelligence arguing against artificial intelligence before court, and then that artificial intelligence judge making a decision on what occurs, right? Like you're still going to have two attorneys, two opposing counsel going up against each other and making those arguments in terms of a motion or a trial, or even in plea negotiations. You're going to have two humans with human elements and understanding what is important to each side to come to an ultimate resolution. So I think that that's where we are. I'm excited for AI. Like I said, we've had some trainings at the public defender's office on AI. I do think that we're going to have some more trainings in the future. We do have a training coming up focusing on AI, but we have a training on March 5th. I don't know if you heard about it. It's the Public Defender Summit in Atlantic City. We have Larry Posner coming, which I always say, he wrote the book on cross-examination, like literally the book.
He did. I wish I could attend. I'm hoping. I right now have a tentative oral argument with the appellate court in Trenton. There's a little tweak question mark next to it. And so I have to find out if there's any way that's not going to happen, because I would have signed up for the whole day, honestly, to get a full day of criminal CLE credits. And Larry Posner, I saw the list of people talking. It's going to be a great CLE. If you're a criminal practitioner and you don't know about it, definitely look at the public defender CLE. It looks
I'm
great,
very
Alex.
excited for it. It's a great lineup. I'm looking forward to it. I know they haven't done it. I want to say in probably close to 20 years, and it's getting it going again.
One of the best ways to support Melissa and the Mighty MERP podcast is to go to our YouTube page, find the subscribe button, open the menu, and click the bell icon so you actually get alerts when we post new episodes or shorts. For any questions or interest in podcasting, go to legalpodcasting.com.